Welcome to the Daily Objective. It is day 53 of the war in Israel. Today, I'm joined by Mark Pellegrino. We're going to talk about B'Tselem. Now, if you're from Israel, you probably know who B'Tselem is. If you are not, you might not, although it is not unlikely that you're paying for it. So B'Tselem is a so-called human rights organization in Israel. We actually did an episode about them earlier on in the war. It was titled "Israel's Enemy Within." I think that episode, our news update took up about half of it, and I think there's a lot to be said about the people within the West that are the problem. I'll get to that in a moment. I want to have a couple of disclaimers. So first of all, we're not journalists. This is not a news channel. We are commentary. We're commenting on the news and on relevant people and organizations as we've been doing, especially during the war. So, we titled this B'Tselem Exposed. I think it's exposed in the sense that we're putting together a lot of information that is already out there, and I think that people should know, especially if, as mentioned, you are funding B'Tselem. Now, another thing is that I am not a fan of the whole "who funds you" argument, because it implies that if you get paid for expressing views, that necessarily means you disagree with those views. I don't think that. I get paid to express my views. I agree with the views I express. I think I believe that the people in B'Tselem actually believe the vile stuff that they put out there. Uh, that being said, I think it is important to know in this context at least some of who's funding them, because in many cases that is the European Union, that is governments that are governments of other countries. Now, Mark, in the U.S. you have this thing where people with a lot of money are often donors to both major parties because they need those favors, whoever gets elected, which is disgusting in and of itself. This is not one of those cases. The European Union doesn't fund treasonous organizations like B'Tselem on the one hand, and then pro-Israel organizations in Israel. They only fund the traitors. So I think this is relevant. Now, B'Tselem is also funded by some George Soros organizations, which from what I know about George Soros, it seems that wherever trouble can be caused, given enough funding, he will provide that funding, and he certainly does that in Israel. So before we start diving into what B'Tselem is, Mark, any comments or thoughts or questions? Yeah, from anything said
Well,
so
I
far.
mean, this is the first I'm hearing of this organization, so I'm dying to know exactly what they do and how they've embedded their lobbyists into our government so that they're forcing money out of my hands and into their pockets. And I want to know what that money does exactly.
So the official description of the organization on their website, it says B'Tselem, the Israeli Information Center for Human Rights in the Occupied Territories. So right away, by calling, Gaza Strip, Judea, Samaria, occupied territories, they tell you where they stand on things. And by calling themselves a human rights organization, look, you know, human rights are a good thing. It just so happens that the organizations that claim to be defending human rights always care only about the rights of those humans who have chosen to dedicate their life to violating the rights of others and of innocence. So it is very much that type of uh, human rights, so-called human rights organization. Now, I think one of the one of the things that they do that I found particularly despicable in the past, and I think they started this sometime in the previous decade, was they want information, right, about the violations of the rights of the the Palestinians in the occupied territories, as they call them. So, in order to get such information and document it, one of their campaigns was a campaign to give out video cameras to Palestinians so that they can document the abuse. Now, this is a very very objective way of doing things, Mark. I have a video camera. I come at you. I do what I want to do, and then I turn the camera on when you decide to defend yourself or to respond. And this has actually caused, it has caused the damage that they would want to cause. That's in terms of the adding fuel to the fire in the West, the anti-Israel hatred. They are definitely major players there. There's all the stories of settlers attacking Palestinian olive groves. This is something that much of the information comes from B'Tselem, comes from the reporters, so-called, that B'Tselem has among the Palestinians who use their cameras that they get from B'Tselem. There's no there's no filter there. There's no process of making sure that the people documenting it are actually honest. And I would venture a guess and say that they are probably for the most part dishonest, and this is what B'Tselem wants. I think this is it's very innovative. It's a very unique thing that B'Tselem has come up with, and I don't know if there are others who are doing similar things now around the world, but they're certainly first in this market. Any thoughts on that specific point?
I mean, yeah, when you give out cameras to a group of folks to document quote unquote injustices, and that group of folks has an incentive to a political incentive, a social incentive to document as many injustices as possible, and sometimes by creating them or manufacturing them. I mean, yeah, you're incentivizing a system that's ripe for corruption. So that's pretty gross. I mean, for me, I want to know what's in it for these folks. I mean, altruists like this who like cutting off their own noses to spite their face it seems like it's a form of masochism, where just inflicting pain on themselves or experiencing pain is in some way its own reward, because what do they expect to get out of this?
Well, it's actually so when we spoke about B'Tselem last time, we mentioned that there was a woman on the board of B'Tselem who was among the kidnapped by Hamas in this war. Now, the role of government is to protect its citizens, good, bad, ugly. If you are living in Israel, the government of Israel has to protect you from outside forces, even if you are a supporter of those outside forces. But I remember seeing some pretty disgusting things out there, by people who are on the Israeli side about this woman, but also people had trouble with the use of the word irony, and I think the word irony is this is exactly what it means. You dedicate your life to a certain cause, and then it is achieved in a way, not fully because Israel is still around, but these are the people that B'Tselem is, even if they won't admit it, fully working for, who killed one of their own. And yeah, but later on in the story, this is a week or two ago, it was actually discovered that she wasn't kidnapped. She was actually killed in the attack. Of course, the conditions of some of the bodies, it's not all of them have been identified even now, almost 2 months after the atrocities. But yeah, the question, what's in it for them? They one of them found out, and the rest are still going. They're still going strong. They're still since October 7th, with some lip service to the attacks are bad, are siding with Hamas, are they're calling for a ceasefire. They're talking about victims on the Palestinian side as if they're victims of Israel rather than victims of Hamas. So yeah, these people, no amount of evidence you throw in their face would change their mind, because they know any evidence you throw in their face, they already know it's a value judgment that they've made based on their really disturbing values.
I mean, I think that's a great subject for perhaps a future daily objective. I mean, what is the psychology behind people like this who actively work to undermine their own well-being? What's the psychology of the religious Jews who are anti-Zionist? I mean, not that they anti-Zionist in the sense that they don't believe that their people should have a homeland, that Israel doesn't have a right to exist. What is it that that pushes people to advocate for values that are probably self-destructive? I mean, that's a very interesting psychological question. Have you
Yes,
guys
although
addressed that?
with religious Jews who are anti-Zionist, I mean, first of all, once you defer to God, I think pretty much anything goes in terms of
Right.
your connection to reality. The more seriously you take it, the more the further away you are from anything to do with again with reality. And the religious anti-Zionist Jews, I don't remember exactly how it goes, but it's something like the Messiah needs to come before the Jews return to Israel. That is why they oppose the state of Israel. So yeah,
And
that
so they're
that's
out there at pro-Palestinian rallies, stomping on pictures of captured Israelis and stomping on the Israeli flag. I mean, it's despicable.
yeah, and of course we on yesterday's show we talked about maybe the most despicable well-known figure out there on the Palestinian side, Norman Finkelstein, the uh Jewish intellectual who is uh really he uses the fact that his parents are Holocaust survivors and basically uses it as part of his propaganda to make a second Holocaust happen. There's no other way that I can think of to describe what he's doing. And yeah, again, in his case, it's so in your face. Even B'Tselem doesn't get to that level, although B'Tselem is more more thorough and maybe more effective in their way, in that the Norman Finkelsteins of the world uh will only have an audience again among the people who really full on are advocates of a second Holocaust, whereas in B'Tselem, the use of the lingo they use with um, human rights and so on, maybe can sway some people. Although, from what I know, Israelis are not really sold on the B'Tselem vision.
Well, that's good. I think they'd have a short half shelf life if they were sold on that. But it's unfortunate that there's even a portion of the population that's so nihilistic that they are working actively for their own demise. And I have to say, you're right. It's ironic that one of them gets murdered in an assault for the very gangs that they're advocating for. But it's a sweet irony, my friend. I like to see them fall like that. They get what they get what they deserve.
Well, so yeah, in terms of I don't know to what extent, like again, there's if it's gonna be someone, I would rather it were them, because of the irony of it. But yeah, again, I would want I would want the state of Israel to protect itself, and I would want the state of Israel to uh protect itself from future attacks. And let me put it this way: if there was a terrorist attack where one person was killed and that person was somebody from B'Tselem, I would still want Israel to go in and completely destroy the threat. Because again, to the Palestinians, and we know this, and I think B'Tselem knows this, it doesn't matter if you are if you're fully behind the existence of the state of Israel, or if you are a fifth column like the people of B'Tselem. Eventually, they want to get rid of all the Jews, and they will do whatever it takes to get there. Now there
Yes.
were these. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that includes the present day collaborators.
Yeah. Um, Now there were these demonstrations in a uh, town in Judea and Samaria, somewhere in the West Bank, called Nabi Saleh, which is a small town. It's right on the barrier between the West Bank and the rest of Israel. And so they would go protest there on Fridays. Now, to what extent this is B'Tselem orchestrated, I don't know. It was definitely something B'Tselem reported heavily on. And these were orchestrated. Whoever it was, that's still an open question. But this would happen every Friday. They would go, they would attack the soldiers. Sometimes the soldiers would respond, usually with tear gas. Sometimes it got a bit worse, and I think a few people have been killed in these uh, so-called demonstrations, but really attacks on soldiers. And one woman, young girl at the time, became a minor celebrity out of this. This was Ahed Tamimi. Now, Daniel, I didn't
Oh,
send you. You remember?
I know this girl.
Yeah, I sorry, Daniel. I should have sent you
She's
some picture of her in advance.
she's a horrible psychopath.
Yeah, and she became a type of hero among anti-Israelis in the West, because you see this supposedly little girl standing up to soldiers, physically attacking soldiers, and the soldiers, of course, do nothing because that is their the self-destructive policies of Israel. Now this girl is from a family of terrorists, a family of one of the I think it was her aunt was a terrorist, was released in the exchange for the Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit in 2011. She's now somewhere in Jordan, and the rest of her family are involved in some ways in terrorism. And she was arrested actually recently. This girl who's now 22 years old was arrested because she posted on
Oh,
Instagram.
yes, I know this post. This is heinous. Go ahead, read it out loud because people have to see what we're dealing with here.
So I think it was in Hebrew and English, but I have it in Hebrew, so I will translate. Off the top of my head, our message to the hordes of settlers: we are waiting for you in every city in the West Bank, from Hebron to Jenin. We will slaughter you, and you will say that what Hitler did to you was a joke. We will drink your blood. We will eat your skulls. Come on, we're waiting for you.
There you
So
go. There you
this,
go.
this is
Aren't they planning on releasing her in the next hostage swap?
Yeah. So now
Mhm.
the current ceasefire has been extended. Last I saw, I haven't checked the news in the last couple of hours. I saw that the ceasefire was violated, so I don't know to what extent. Again, it is Hamas's decision, but if Hamas wants her released, uh, that she
Hey,
will be released.
hey, since Hamas is working in coordination through Iran with the Houthis and Hezbollah, whenever the Houthis or Hezbollah are firing upon Israel or the United States, I think this should be considered a violation of the ceasefire, because they attacked an Israeli ship, some Houthi pirates just what, yesterday.
Um, Look, I mean, it's difficult to, we're talking about this violation of an agreement with, as if it's a normal agreement between human beings. This isn't an
Right.
agreement with savages. So the agreement is with these specific savages, and
Unbelievable.
even without any shots fired, I think it was the second or third day that they delayed the release of the hostages until nighttime. Hamas has been uh, while slaughtering Israelis wherever they can, they also play psychological warfare, and again, I think they're winning on all fronts because Israel plays into their hands. Um, even again with this deal, seeing the hostages released is a beautiful thing, and it's hard not to get emotional about something like that, but that is out of
When
context.
yeah, but when that's juxtaposed against the image of these prisoners going back into Gaza and you know chanting that they're going to murder Jews, chanting for more Jewish blood. I mean, it's as much as I want these prisoners to be back home. The fundamental situation isn't going to change unless Hamas is dead, like permanently dead, and Hezbollah is dead, and Islamic Jihad is dead, and Iran has something really to think about, like incendiary bombs up their ass. Sorry, but it's not going to end until Iran ends. It's not going to end until the mullahs are completely and totally humiliated and destroyed in the eyes of the world. Until this ideology loses purchase with a few romantic altruists because it just brings nothing but destruction and death, this is going to continue forever. So I'm happy that these 50 folks are coming home, but it comes at too high a price in my view.
Yeah, and when you mentioned the chants of the released terrorists about coming to kill the Jews. This is not like like when we see these uh, leftists on the weekend in the streets of London, probably just they were looking for something fun to do on the weekend. It was going to the new vegan restaurant or going to this protest, and they happen to choose the latter and they chant from the river to the sea. These are not people who will actually go there and try to throw the Jews into the sea, but the terrorists will, and we know this from past hostage swaps where
The last one with that 1,000 for the one soldier, didn't one of the characters actually planned this massacre?
yeah, the head of
So
Hamas in Gaza is one of the people who was released, Yahya Sinwar. He was released in that prisoner swap.
yeah, and folks, you want to make hard distinctions between Hamas and the Palestinian people, just watch some of these chants. The chants are happening on a street filled with Palestinians who are chanting enthusiastically to murder Jews. So the distinction, there's less of a distinction than you may think for those of you out there who want to be quote unquote civil in a very uncivil situation. I'm sorry, you don't play by Marcus of Queensberry rules when you're fighting for your life.
There is
Uh, Go
Yeah,
ahead.
there's no distinction. Hamas is a true
Correct.
representative of the Palestinian
That's
people.
correct.
They're not just chanting because somebody came home. They were chanting when the hostages were taken, when the bodies were taken. This is there's no Western society which is so united around any cause or anything as the Palestinian people are united around the terrorist cause or the cause of wiping Israel off the map. And the people who are not Hamas are Islamic Jihad, are the PLO. They are, they support the same thing, maybe by different means or with different leaders, but they
Indeed,
are.
and I just want to say really quickly, because we put ourselves out on the fringes by saying this, but it's absolutely true, and we have to be faithful to the truth. The Palestinian identity is itself combined with this pan-Arab nationalism and religious fanaticism. There's really no separating it from that. So if you call yourself that, in a sense, you are claiming membership of a gang, a violent gang that wants to wipe out a whole group of human beings. So, I mean, that's where I go with it, my friend.
Yeah, and by the way, people in the West who aren't really following the news and are just following or aren't really following the Middle East and are just starting to follow now could be excused to some point in thinking that uh, Hamas is not a true representative of the Palestinian people. A, because how can millions be behind such savagery, and B, because they watch the news and they see images of Palestinians looking like the victims. That you don't see the Palestinians celebrating the slaughter of Jews in the streets on the BBC. But B'Tselem and the likes of them, these organizations, these people who dedicate, again, they're all they do is watch what's going on there. They know the Palestinian people better than we do. They know exactly how horrible they are and how this is a cause they are united behind, and they know that they are among the target. They are there. They're in the firing zone or whatever it's called. And yet they do this. Again, you said how you asked the question to which I have no answer. How do people actually come to the decision? How does an individual come to the decision? This is what I'm going to dedicate my life to. I'm going to dedicate my life to the cause of I'm living in a relatively free country. I'm going to dedicate my cause to the savages just over the border who want to wipe us all off the map and replace us with a Middle Ages type.
Well, that this just goes to show you that altruism creates a kind of mental illness, and that's what these people are acting on. They think they're being moral. Anyway, we should bring Gina Gorlin on here to discuss this. Maybe she has some ideas.
Yes, although the questions, I've said this before, like we mentioned yesterday that Douglas Murray said that what's his name? Finkelstein is a psychopath, and I have a problem with that in the sense that you let somebody off the hook when you say, "Look, he's just has something wrong with his brain wiring." No, he's aware, and these people are aware of where they stand, of what they're fighting for. Like evil on that level really
Oh,
does
I don't
exist.
think I see what you're saying, but I don't think he's letting him off the hook. I think by labeling him a psychopath, he's saying he's an extremely dangerous individual. Psychopaths know exactly what they're doing. They're not crazy. They're not A psychopath isn't crazy. A psychopath has no sense of compassion or empathy for another human being. They're on that extreme scale of a malignant narcissism that likes to manipulate human beings for their own interior pleasure. So he's not letting him off the hook. He's labeling him exactly as what he is. And I think that sets us up as people who have to fight people like that for dealing with that reality that this man is not really he's not going to engage in rational discourse because it doesn't serve his purposes, not because he can't, but because it doesn't serve his purposes. So we have to fight him, and you have to fight a psychopath in a completely different way.
So Mark, I just realized we are out of time and we have some super chats. I want to thank two super chatters from yesterday who I didn't get the chance to thank, Christopher Smith and Kathleen. Today we have a super chat from Jonathan Honig. Thank you, Jonathan. Another super chat from Jonathan, super chat from Bonnie, super chat from Catherine, who says, "I'm afraid I have no words to express my outrage." I understand and agree, and that's a problem I face while actually trying to find the words while we're live.
Amen.
Ashley Shrug says, we are what we pretend to be, so we must be careful about what we pretend to be. That's a Kurt Vonnegut quote, I believe. And yeah.
I'll take it.
All right.
I think I see where she's going with that.
Well, that is a good note on which to end. We are a bit late with the reality show, but it will start minute or so after we are off the air here. Today's topic is Hamas violates ceasefire at 7 p.m. UK time.
No, come on.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
I'm
was
good.
actually thinking of putting something like breaking news, but enough with the clickbait. Um, And at 7 p.m. UK time, which is an hour from now, we have the Fountainhead Book Club for ARCUK members. So I hope you all join us for both of those. Thank you, Mark.
Thank
And
you.
we'll see you all in a minute. Bye.
Recording stopped.
Are you